the experience of Clockwork Orange, the memories that I have of Stanley Kubrick are intense and highly self-contradictory, like an oxymoron. And it's wonderful. I would never part with those memories. And I wish there were more, but at the same time, I'm glad in a way that it stopped. As I said, it's a funny ambivalence that one feels, and it betrays more intensity of depth of feeling than I was aware of consciously until he died. Over the last several days, I've been trying to look through some of the music that we did for both The Clockwork Orange and The Shining, and I found some passages that nobody's ever heard before that were things that almost made it into the film. And one of the things that almost made it into the film was based on the instrument that's in front of me here. And this is something we call the circular controller. And we shorthandedly refer to it as the CIRCON, circular controller, get it? And it's a control instrument that we built for The Shining. When we asked Stanley what kind of music was he listening to, and he said, oh, you know, things like Sibelius's Valse Triste. And we thought, oh, that's a lovely piece. You know, the ya, 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 ya. And instead of playing that with a keyboard-like synthesizer, which we had the Moog, we thought we'd build an instrument specially for it that could do a singing voice. And this is it here. And I'll show you what it sounds like. You can see that it's immediately different from any keyboard instrument. It's much more vocal, intimate, performing, almost like a violin sound. It takes an awful lot of practice and skill to do this. I'm very out of practice. And you can actually get to the point where you can perform fairly nice, substantial musical lines with this. I'll play for you right now, right off of the computer, which we use for everything for audio nowadays, the cue that we included in the demo tape that we first sent to Stanley for The Shining. And this is the Valse Triste in an arrangement I did using the CIRCON as the solo instrument. You'll hear it right away. Well, that piece was part of the demonstration reel that we sent to Stanley when we had just been getting involved in The Shining. And the only place it got used was not in the movie, I'm sorry to say, but it was used in Vivian's documentary on the making of The Shining, where it's very effective to end that whole documentary. I'm sorry, though, because it's such a pretty instrument, and I would have loved its mournful and a little haunting, spooky quality to be in the film. The only place that you hear the CIRCON in the film is this cue, which is called Rocky Mountains, and it's a big, majestic type of music when the family is driving up the hill early in the movie to the hotel. This is what it sounded like. When we first were told to try and write something to the novel, we came up with a lot of music that just never was going to work when the final footage was done. And one of these cues is something that was big and fat and dramatic that we call Boulderado. And it is something we envisioned for the scenes in which you see the mountain in the hotel for the first time. Now, imagine this fitting anywhere in The Shining as we know it. What I haven't played you, though, is some of the outtakes music that was not used in Clockwork Orange. And one of the pieces that I found just recently was something we called Orange Minuet. And it was intended to be used in the sequence in which Malcolm is shown to be cured on stage in what looks like a high school gymnasium. And if you remember, that has currently something called the Overture to the Sun. and we intended instead to play the Orange Minuet, which is this piece. Sure. I think that Christian and Stanley both wanted to have that in the film, and they were even getting excited about perhaps putting it out as a single, I thought. That was the impression I got. I hope I'm not misremembering these things. They're so many years ago, you don't know if you're making up the stories or not. But I know they were excited about this piece and were rather heartsick when it really didn't fit the scene as well as they thought it did, and it had to be left out because there was no place else in Clockwork Orange where this piece could be used. One of the pieces of music that Stanley told us would make a good cut for the album was this last piece called Country Lane. It's the way that we ended the album. And it's a nice piece that had a life of its own, quite apart from the film, and for some reason it's become terribly popular. And it's got a great big vocoding chorus. I'll show you that section right now. And it's a upbeat piece which takes place, you remember the scene in which the Droogs, now police officers, happen to run across Alec and they beat him up. And this is the music that takes place in that scene as he's a pitiful wreck in the middle of a thunderstorm, going and finding himself back in the home that he didn't realize he was at. You know, I just noticed the cats are here. And something I haven't told you is that my memory of Stanley will always be of him sort of saying goodbye to us each day after we work with him, holding a cat like this, or maybe a cat on his lap. There was always a cat in the picture. He doesn't want to be held right now, I see. Do you, Charlie? And that's something that seems so human to me and is an inevitable, indelible piece of my linking with him.